Have you ever packed for a family vacation only to discover you were the one they planned to leave behind? I wouldn't have thought that way 5 years ago. But 5 years ago, I still had Ellen. And when you lose the one person who looked you in the eyes each morning and said, "You matter," the silence that follows changes you. Makes you doubt things you used to believe in without question, like love or loyalty, or whether your own daughter actually wants you around or just wants you quiet. My name is Franklin Dwyer. I'm 78 years old. I taught American history for 36 years at the University of Vermont. I still live in the same house in Burlington that Ellen and I bought in 1982, back when interest rates were through the roof, and our daughter Amanda still thought I was the smartest man alive. Ellen died of a cerebral aneurysm. One second she was standing in the kitchen humming along to a Simon and Garfunkel tune, the next she was on the floor. They said it was quick, that she didn't suffer. But I've learned doctors will say anything to soften a blow. Amanda didn't make the funeral. Back-to-back sales meetings, Dad. She'd said over the phone, her voice too crisp, too rehearsed. "I'll fly in Sunday and see what needs sorting." She flew in all right, gave me a corporate hug that smelled like perfume and productivity, asked if I was going to keep the house or maybe look into a retirement community. They have great pickleball courts now. That was the first time I noticed it. The subtle distance. The calculation in her eyes, like she was assessing market value, not mourning her mother. Since then, I'd only seen Amanda a handful of times, and each time was attached to a request. Tuition for the twins, a kitchen remodel, emergency roof work. Colin, her husband, needed a new vehicle for his job. Each request was painted with just enough sincerity to make me feel guilty saying no. So I never did. I wasn't poor. Ellen and I had always lived modestly. Our savings could last me a good while, and I wasn't spending much now that the house was quiet and I had nowhere to be. But every time I signed a check, I felt a little more invisible. So when Amanda called me out of the blue 2 months ago, her voice bright with something almost cheerful, I was cautious. "Dad," she said, "Colin and I were talking, and we think it's time you got out of that house for a bit." I paused. "Got out where?" "Asheville," she said. "North Carolina. We've booked a beautiful house near the Blue Ridge Parkway. 3 bedrooms, mountain air, big porch, hiking trails. It's going to be amazing." I blinked at the sunlight hitting my kitchen counter. "Why now?" She chuckled lightly. "Because we miss you, that's why. And honestly, Dad, it'll be good for you. Just some fresh air." I don't know why I said yes. Maybe I missed being around family. Maybe I thought this was a turning point. Maybe deep down I was tired of drinking cold coffee in silence every morning. So I packed 3 shirts, 2 pairs of trousers, 1 wool cardigan Ellen had knitted the winter before she passed, passport, medications, credit card, and $800 in cash just in case. Old habit. On the morning of departure, I was dressed by 6:00. She'd said they'd pick me up at 8:00. I watched the clock, listened to the tick of the old pendulum in the hallway, drank half a cup of coffee that tasted more like guilt than caffeine. At 8:27, a glossy black SUV pulled into my driveway. Amanda stepped out stylish in white jeans and a pastel blouse, phone in hand. Colin stayed behind the wheel, the engine still running. She didn't knock, just walked in. "You ready, Dad?" she asked, looking me up and down. "Please tell me you're not wearing that on the trip." I looked down at my trousers, gray wool, clean, neatly pressed, the same pair I'd worn to Ellen's memorial. Not flashy, but dignified. "What's wrong with what I'm wearing?" I asked. Amanda sighed, already turning toward the door. "It's fine. It's just... Asheville's not a funeral, Dad. We'll stop somewhere on the way. Maybe find you something less... Vermont, Professor." Colin didn't speak when I got into the back seat. He didn't even look back. Just adjusted the GPS and muttered gas station in 40. Amanda climbed into the passenger seat and snapped her seatbelt with a practiced flick. "It's about 14 hours if we don't stop much. We'll do one night in Harrisburg." 14 hours. I hadn't realized how far they'd booked this thing. I nodded, settled in, and stared out the window as my home, my quiet, creaky, familiar home, faded from view. The car smelled like citrus air freshener and leather. Amanda and Colin talked in low tones up front, mostly about work, budgets, timelines, something about a new investor dinner. Not once did they ask me how I'd been sleeping, if my knees still acted up in the cold, if I missed Ellen. I tried to make conversation somewhere around hour 3. "How are Emma and Noah doing?" I asked. "I haven't heard much since Christmas." Amanda glanced back briefly. "Busy. Emma's got some music thing. Noah's struggling in organic chemistry." Colin chuckled under his breath. The boy's bright, but he'd pass faster if he stopped chasing that barista. Amanda waved a hand. "He's 19. Let him be." I nodded, pretending that was enough, that those one-sentence updates counted as connection. We stopped at a roadside diner in Pennsylvania. Amanda ordered my food for me. "He'll have the turkey sandwich. Light mayo. No fries too salty," she told the waitress before I could open my mouth. "I'd actually like the soup," I said. She smiled tightly. "Dad, you remember what creamed soup did to your stomach last winter? Let's not repeat that." I didn't argue. I wasn't even sure which soup incident she was referring to or if it had happened at all. Back in the car, I sat quietly, while Colin played a podcast on marketing strategies. Amanda dozed off, her head tilted toward the window. I watched the lines on the highway blur into gray. It wasn't until we pulled into the motel that I realized how quiet they'd gone. Not just tired, quiet, deliberate quiet. 2 rooms, Amanda said, handing me a plastic card key. "You're in 203. We'll meet at 7 for dinner." Where, I asked. "There's a pub across the lot. We'll call you if anything changes." But they didn't. 7 came and went. I waited in my room, fully dressed, jacket on. The room phone never rang. When I peeked through the blinds at 8:30, their room was dark. The next morning, Amanda greeted me in the hallway with a to-go coffee. "You ready for the second leg I took?" The cup nodded. "Looking forward to some time with you two." Her smile was almost convincing. "It'll be good for you, Dad." That line again. "It'll be good for you." I should have known then that this trip wasn't about reconnection. It was about control. About rewriting who I was and what I was capable of. But I still had hope. Maybe they just didn't know how to be gentle. Maybe family was like coffee, never quite right, unless you made it yourself. I sat in the back seat and watched the Blue Ridge Mountains rise in the distance, unaware that the hardest part of the trip hadn't even begun. We arrived in Asheville just before sunset. The house Amanda had rented sat at the end of a long gravel driveway, tucked between whispering trees and gentle slopes. It was beautiful. I won't deny that cedar siding wrap-around porch floor to ceiling windows that looked out over a valley starting to blush orange in the dying light. Colin popped the trunk and hoisted out 4 matching suitcases. None of them were mine. Amanda pointed toward the front steps. "Your room's upstairs, last door on the right. There's a view of the woods. You'll like it." I didn't mention the stairs, didn't tell her my knees had been aching since Pennsylvania. I just smiled, picked up my modest duffel bag, and made the climb. The room was smaller than I'd expected, more storage than space. A twin bed, no closet, a lamp with a flickering bulb. The window didn't face the valley. It looked out at a retaining wall. At dinner that night, pasta and greens Amanda barely touched. They talked about everything but me. I tried to ask if we had any plans for hiking or sightseeing. "We've got a wine tour tomorrow," Colin said. Amanda nodded. "It's already booked. Lots of walking. Probably not the best thing for your knees." I started to reply but stopped. I didn't want to beg for inclusion. Not again. "I'll rest then," I said. "Great." Amanda smiled, relief showing through. "We'll be back by evening. There's sandwich stuff in the fridge." That night I couldn't sleep. The mattress creaked with every breath. My thoughts wouldn't sit still. The silence in that forest cabin wasn't peace, it was like being buried alive in civility. I turned onto my side and stared at the wall for what must have been hours. When I finally did sleep, it was the kind of sleep that drags you under too hard. Dreamless. Heavy. I didn't wake until almost 10 the next morning, which for me was unheard of. I knew something was wrong the moment I stepped out into the hallway. The house was too still. No music. No sound of breakfast or coffee brewing. The SUV was gone from the driveway. On the kitchen counter, I found a folded piece of paper. Dad Colin and I went into town for the day. "Don't wait up. There's food in the fridge. Sandwiches. Enjoy the peace and quiet." Amanda. I stood there reading it over and over like the words might suddenly mean something different. No mention of where they went. No apology for not waking me. No plan for dinner. Just, don't wait up. My wallet was on the kitchen table. I never leave it there. I always keep it zipped in my bag, tucked under a shirt. I opened it. Cash was still there. Credit card wasn't. I checked again. Every slot, every flap. Nothing. I ran upstairs, opened my duffel bag, and unzipped the side pocket where I'd tucked my passport. Gone. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't forgetfulness. I looked around the room, suddenly hyper-aware of every detail, every shift in air. They hadn't gone to town. They'd left me, alone, in a strange place, no ID. No phone they'd offered to hold on to it during the ride just to help you stay present. No credit card, no transportation, and no explanation. Just an aging man in a borrowed room with a plate of wrapped sandwiches in the fridge and a lie written on a folded sheet of paper. For a long time, I just stood there in that kitchen. The clock on the microwave blinked 10:27. The only sound was the wind whispering through the pines outside. The same trees that had seemed so peaceful yesterday now felt like walls closing in. I sat down at the table, still holding the empty wallet like it might offer me a clue. How many life stories start like this? I wondered, not with some grand betrayal, but with 1,000 little omissions stacked just right. I opened the fridge and saw 2 sandwiches, plastic wrapped and labeled in Amanda's handwriting. Dad. Not love Amanda. Not enjoy. Just Dad. like that word was enough. I didn't eat. I went back upstairs, opened every drawer, every cabinet in the bathroom, even checked behind the shower curtain. No note, no spare key, nothing. They were gone. I reached under the mattress, an old habit from my days in cheap motels on lecture trips, and pulled out the envelope I'd tucked there the night we arrived. Inside 800 bills. Ellen always said cash is freedom. And once again, she was right. I stuffed the money deep into my sock, put on my walking shoes, and stepped outside. No car, no neighbors, just forest and gravel and a long road bending into trees. I started walking. About a mile down the hill, I flagged down a maintenance truck. The driver was a kind young man named Ty. When I told him I'd gotten separated from family and needed a ride to the town center, he didn't ask questions. Just said hop in. In town, I found the small bus depot. There was one route north to Roanoke, then from there I could piece together a way home. The woman behind the counter looked up when I asked for a ticket. "I'll need some ID, sir." I handed her my driver's license, old, faded, but valid. I hadn't driven in years, but I'd never taken it out of my wallet. I could still hear Ellen's voice teasing, "One day you'll thank me for keeping that thing updated." Turns out today was that day. The ride from Asheville to Roanoke was 4 hours. From Roanoke, I transferred to another bus, then another. A zigzag trail across state lines. I ate saltines and apples from vending machines. I didn't sleep much. My back hurt, my legs swelled, but my mind stayed sharp. On the second day, somewhere outside Allentown, I bought a cheap flip phone at a gas station and called my bank. The voice on the line was polite, professional, until I said my name. "Mr. Dwyer," she said slowly. "You're calling about the transfer request." "What transfer request?" She paused. "There was an attempted transfer of $25,000 yesterday from your primary savings account to Amanda Dwyer's account. It flagged our system and was temporarily held for verification." I closed my eyes. "And the credit card?" I asked. $4,800 withdrawal in Asheville. Gas stations, hotel charges, and wine. I took a deep breath and said, "Block the card. All access. Immediately." "Yes, sir." I hung up the phone and stared out the bus window at the blur of unfamiliar farmland. The numbness began to crack. Beneath it, anger. Not the hot kind, not the kind that lashes out. The cold kind. The kind that builds. The kind that waits. 3 days after I left Asheville, I stepped out of a cab in front of my house in Burlington. The porch sagged a little more than I remembered. The mailbox leaned slightly to one side. But it was mine. Still standing. Still waiting. I unlocked the door. Silence. Dust on the windowsills. The faint scent of pine cleaner and thyme. I dropped my bag at the door, walked into the kitchen, and made myself a pot of coffee. As it brewed, I sat at the table and wrote 2 lists. Column A, what they took. My credit card. My passport. My dignity. Column B, what they didn't. My house. My memory, my right to act. Life stories don't always come with neat lessons or moral endings. But this one was about to turn a corner. Not revenge, not spite, just truth. And this time I wasn't giving anyone a key to rewrite it, but me. You ever feel that strange kind of calm? The one that comes not when things are fixed, but when you finally decide you're done being fooled. That's where I was the morning after I got home. I woke up at 5:30, same as I always did during my teaching years. The sun hadn't reached the kitchen windows yet, but I brewed coffee, sat down with a yellow legal pad, and wrote 2 words across the top: no more. No more second chances for people who only call when they need. No more hoping silence means peace. No more letting others narrate my story. Amanda thought she'd left me stranded in the woods, vulnerable, confused, dependent. But she forgot I taught entire classrooms how to trace power back to its roots. She forgot I read contracts like scripture. She forgot I was Ellen's husband, and Ellen didn't raise a fool. My first call was to the bank. A woman named Heather Polite Efficient walked me through every transaction on my blocked credit card. 4 charges at a luxury inn in Asheville. A wine shipment. A $600 dinner at a place called Stonefield Grove. None of them mine. Then she mentioned something else. Mr. Dwyer. There was an attempted wire of $25,000 to an account belonging to Amanda Mathers. It was halted pending authorization. They'll never get that authorization, I said. Lock down everything. I want a new card, new account numbers, and no outside access granted to anyone, no matter what story they spin. Yes, sir. We'll have the documents ready by noon. I thanked her and hung up. Then I pulled out a manila folder from the filing cabinet in the hallway closet, the one I hadn't opened since Ellen passed. Inside were papers from 2 years ago. Deed documents. Mortgage co-borrower agreements, contribution records. I flipped through until I found what I was looking for, a notarized statement of ownership. Amanda and Colin's house in New Haven. The one they bought 8 months after Ellen's death. The one they said was too big for just the 2 of us, but a great investment for the twins someday. The one they had begged me to help fund, and I had written a check for $50,000 on the spot. I remembered the way Amanda had said it back then. Dad will make you co-owner. Just in case. So you'll always have a place with us. I didn't question it at the time. I was grieving. She knew it. She used it. But what she didn't expect was that I'd kept every piece of paper. That deed, it named 3 owners. Amanda Mathers, Colin Mathers, and me. Franklin Dwyer. Equal shares, equal rights. And one line right near the bottom in clean legal language. Any decision to sell, transfer, or encumber this property must be agreed upon by all listed owners. I smiled, not with malice, with clarity. So they think I'm just a forgetful old man. Let's see how forgetful I am when I put the house they tried to keep me out of on the market. That afternoon, I put on a clean shirt, polished my old leather shoes, the ones Ellen used to call my thinking shoes, and took a cab to the law office of Susan Blake. She'd handled our estate planning when Ellen was alive. Smart, sharp, always had a pencil stuck behind her ear. Franklin, she said when I walked in. I was just thinking of you last week when I saw maple leaves turn in the square. Still have your view from the hill. I do, I said. But I'm not here about the house on the hill. I pulled out the deed and placed it on her desk. I'm here about the house on Hawthorne Lane. Amanda and Collins. Her eyebrows lifted as she scanned the document. You're still on this title, never left? I said, though I haven't been invited in once since they moved. She turned a few more pages, eyes narrowing. Well, this clause here, it gives you teeth. They can't sell, remortgage, or transfer without your approval. And since you're an equal owner, I want to initiate a sale. I said, calm but firm. Susan looked at me, not with surprise, but with a kind of quiet respect. Franklin, she said gently. Are you sure this could lead to some very public fireworks? I nodded. You ever sit in the back of a car for 14 hours while your own daughter and her husband talk over you like you're a burden? I haven't, she said softly. Well, I have, I replied. And I think it's time I stopped apologizing for still being alive. She smiled just a little. Then let's get to work. Within the hour, she had the paperwork drawn up, formal notification of intent to sell, registered notice to the other co-owners, and legal authority to represent me in any proceeding. Next, she connected me to Joanna Park, a local real estate agent she trusted. We met at the property the next day. The house was bigger than I remembered. White pillars, a manicured lawn, some kind of abstract sculpture in the front garden that looked like an expensive paperclip. I stood at the sidewalk while Joanna walked the perimeter with a clipboard. Great location, she said. Desirable neighborhood. Schools. Quiet street. I'd estimate market value around $690,000, possibly more. I did the quick math. My third $230,000. Not bad, especially considering they never intended for me to see a dime. Joanna looked over. You all right? I nodded. Just thinking how people can take everything from you except the proof they signed in front of a notary. She smiled. You'd be surprised how often stories like yours come across my desk. I raised an eyebrow. Really? She folded her clipboard closed. Oh yes. Life stories don't always make headlines, but behind every deed, there's a story someone hoped would stay buried. That line stuck with me. Behind every deed, there's a buried story, and I wasn't about to let mine stay buried any longer. Back at Susan's office, I signed the final documents to initiate the listing. Amanda and Colin would receive official notice within 3 business days. After that, they'd have 30 days to respond, agree to the sale, buy me out, or challenge it in court. I knew which one they'd choose, and I was ready for it. That night, I sat on my porch with a mug of black tea and watched the last light fade from the tips of the trees. The old wind chime Ellen had hung still sang faintly in the breeze. What would you do if your own child tried to erase you with a smile and a signature? Some people fight fire with fire. Me, I fight erasure with paper. The letter arrived 5 days later. Not from Amanda, not from Colin. From Lorne D. Ellsworth, attorney at law, embossed professional and cold as a courtroom tile floor. The letter began politely enough. Dear Mr. Dwyer, we represent Amanda and Colin Mathers regarding the pending sale of the property located at 12 Hawthorne Lane. We have reason to believe that your recent legal actions may not reflect a sound mental or medical condition. I stopped reading. There it was, the move I'd been waiting for. They weren't just refusing to sell. They were claiming I was incompetent, unable to make decisions for myself, unfit to manage finances, unfit to live unsupervised. I sat at the kitchen table for a long while, the letter spread open beside my teacup. The sun through the window made the ink shine like the words were proud of what they were doing. I picked up the phone and called Susan Blake. They're playing that card, I said. She didn't ask which card. She already knew. They sent the paperwork she asked. Certified mail, with their lawyer's signature and all the gall in the world. She sighed. Then it's time to play ours. 2 days later, I was sitting in the office of Dr. Leonard Bloom, a court-approved geriatric psychiatrist with a waiting room full of Reader's Digests and jigsaw puzzles no one finished. He asked me 100 questions. Who's the president? What's today's date? name the last 3 books I'd read. Then he switched to harder ones. Why do you think your daughter would attempt to declare you mentally unfit, Mr. Dwyer? I stared at him for a moment. Then I answered without bitterness, because she didn't expect me to fight back. I passed every test: memory, reasoning, language, emotional stability. 3 separate specialists filed independent evaluations. All 3 came to the same conclusion. Mr. Franklin Dwyer is of sound mind and full capacity to manage his affairs. Susan submitted the results to the court the following Monday. Amanda's lawyer tried to stall, of course. Claimed I'd coached for the exams. Insisted on reviewing the credentials of each doctor. But the judge wasn't having it. The motion to declare me incapacitated was denied. They'd tried to strip me of my name. Instead, I got it back in ink and court seal. That evening, I walked down to the edge of Lake Champlain and watched the water ripple in the golden light. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even surprised. Just resolute. They'd forced my hand, tried to write me out of my own story. But here I was, pen still in hand. With the court's decision in my favor, I knew one thing for sure. It was time to finish what I started. I wasn't interested in vengeance. I wasn't angry, not in the way they probably expected me to be. I was something quieter, stronger, like the roots of an old oak finally remembering the shape of the ground it once claimed. My first stop was the DMV. Colin's SUV, a glossy black Ford Explorer, had been sitting in my garage for over a year. He left it there under the pretense that our driveway's too tight and Dad's garage is safer. What he really meant was, it's free and no one will ask questions. But now I had questions. I filed an abandoned property claim, submitted documentation that the car hadn't moved in 12 months, and confirmed that I'd reached out to the registered co-owner with no reply. 30 days later, the title was transferred to my name. I sold the vehicle through a dealership 2 towns over for $41,000. Cashier's check. Deposited the same day. Next, the joint account. Back when Amanda was in college, I opened a small bank account under both our names. A simple way to send her money during finals and rent emergencies. After graduation, she said we should keep it open just in case. For 20 years, that just in case bled into monthly withdrawals. No thank yous. No conversations. Just $500 disappearing like clockwork. The balance when I walked into the bank, $23,800. I sat with a representative named Carla, a kind woman who offered me coffee and looked like someone who'd seen too many families fall apart across her desk. Technically, she said, you both have access. But given that 100% of deposits were made by you, transfer the full amount, I said, then close the account. She nodded. Do you want to notify the other party? No, I said. Let the silence speak. Funny how many life stories unravel not with yelling, but with quiet forms and calm signatures. With the car sold and the joint account closed, I took the final step. I moved. I loved that house in Burlington. Loved the memories inside it. The kitchen Ellen painted yellow in '97. The porch swing we installed the day Amanda graduated high school. The maple tree we planted together the year we turned 60. But homes can become anchors, and I needed wind in my sails again. I found a small apartment on the other side of town. 1-bedroom, 2nd-floor view of the lake, and just enough space for a bookshelf, a chair, and a kitchen big enough for one man's coffee pot. The landlord, a retired park ranger named Walt, gave me a discount for having a solid handshake. We signed a 12-month lease. I gave him a smile and a check. He gave me a new key and a quiet nod that said, "Welcome back to yourself." I changed my mailing address, updated my medical contacts, got a new phone number, created a fresh email. In less than 2 weeks, I was a ghost in the world Amanda used to control. She didn't know where I lived, didn't know what I'd sold, didn't know what I was planning next, and I liked it that way. That week, Susan called. Her voice was calm but direct. "They haven't responded to the house sale notice," she said. "We're clear to proceed with the legal filing. This could go to court." "I'm ready," I replied. "They're going to be furious." "They already are," I said. "But now I'm just free." I stood at the window of my new apartment and watched the wind ripple across the lake. Not angry, not afraid, just free. This is what Brian's story is really about, isn't it? Not revenge, not even justice, but the quiet, stubborn return to dignity. The court ruled in my favor on a Thursday morning. I didn't attend the hearing in person. Susan went in my place. I'd already said what needed saying, not in speeches, but in actions, in documents, in lines that couldn't be erased. The judge approved the forced sale of the Hawthorne Lane property. The buyer, a quiet man from out of state, agreed to close at $685,000. My share a clean $228.03. The rest would go to Amanda and Colin, their 2/3. They had 30 days to vacate. No extensions, no more negotiations. I didn't expect to hear from them. But fate or pride had other plans. 3 days later, as I walked out of a small cafe downtown with a coffee in hand, a black SUV skidded to a halt at the curb. Amanda jumped out, hair disheveled, eyes wild. Behind her, Colin stepped out more slowly. His jaw clenched, his eyes hard. I stood still. "Dad," Amanda said, storming toward me, "you sold our house." "No," I said quietly. "Our house. 1/3 of it was mine. You just forgot. You blindsided us." I raised an eyebrow. "Did I? Or did you assume I was too old to read fine print?" Colin stepped in. "You didn't have to go this far. You didn't have to humiliate us." I looked at them both. "You left me in a cabin in Asheville with no ID, no credit card, no way home. Tell me which part of this feels like justice, and which part feels like consequence." Amanda looked around nervously as if afraid someone might overhear. "This is family, Dad. You're supposed to protect us. We've always included you." "Included me," I repeated slowly. "Is that what you call years of silence, requests for money, and pretending I don't exist unless you need something?" "We were worried about you," she snapped. "You were forgetful, isolated." "I was grieving," I said, voice still even. "You know the difference. You just found it convenient to ignore." Colin crossed his arms. "What do you want from us? An apology?" "I don't want anything," I said. "Not anymore." Amanda took a step forward, her voice lowering. "You think this makes you free, selling our house, taking the money? You'll die alone, Dad, and you'll deserve it." I didn't answer right away, just looked her in the eyes, those same eyes that once sparkled when she brought me scribbled drawings from school, when she'd say, "Read me one more page, Daddy." Now they were angry, hardened. But underneath the fury, I saw it fear. Not fear of losing the money, fear of losing control. And this was the moment I knew I had already won. Not because of court rulings, not because of the money, but because she no longer got to define who I was. After Amanda and Colin drove off, tires screeching more than necessary, I stood on that sidewalk a while longer, letting the wind hit my face. Not a single part of me trembled. I thought it would hurt more, but it didn't. There's something liberating about watching the final thread snap, not with bitterness, but with clarity. That afternoon, I walked to the bank, deposited the check, and asked to open a new trust account, not in Amanda's name, not in Colin's, not even in my own. Name of the beneficiary, the banker asked. I smiled. June Evelyn Dwyer, my granddaughter. Just turned 12 last spring. I haven't seen her in nearly a year, not since Amanda stopped bringing her around. But I remember the last letter she sent me scribbled in purple gel pen. Dear Grandpa, Mommy says you're busy, but I think you miss me. I drew you a mountain. Love, June. I kept that letter in my drawer, pulled it out sometimes when the nights were long and the silence heavy. She wasn't part of what they did to me, and I needed her to know that. So I created a modest education fund, something she'd receive when she turned 18, no strings attached, no announcements, no conditions, just trust, quiet, unconditional trust. Life stories, after all, aren't only about what we survive, they're about what we pass on. In the weeks that followed, my days settled into a rhythm. I'd wake early, brew coffee in my new little kitchen, sit on the balcony, and watch the sunrise over the lake. Some days I'd sketch the view. Other days I'd read mostly poetry, and sometimes old letters from Ellen tied in a faded blue ribbon. I reconnected with Harold, a Navy buddy from the old days, now living just 2 buildings over. We played chess every Wednesday and took turns losing with grace. One evening, as I sat on the park bench by the water, a soft voice called from behind me. Grandpa, I turned. It was June. Taller than I remembered, hair in a loose braid. She clutched something in her hand, a folded piece of paper. Amanda wasn't with her. I asked Mom to drop me off, she said quickly, like it might vanish if she didn't say it fast enough. I told her I needed to return a book I left here. I didn't speak, just opened my arms. She came in without hesitation. We sat there for a long while. No big speeches, no explanations, just presence. Eventually, she handed me the paper. It was a drawing, a mountain, again. But this time at the peak, a tiny figure with silver hair holding a flag that read, "Still here." I smiled. My throat tightened. Thanks for coming, June. I never forgot you, she whispered, even if they tried to make me. I looked out over the water and thought, this is it. Not revenge, not winning, not even justice. Just being seen and choosing not to disappear. That's the real ending. If this story moved, you don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who believes in second chances. This is Brian's story, where every chapter is proof that it's never too late to reclaim your voice.